The damn champagne flute felt slick in my sweaty palm. Another gala, another room full of New Orleans elite, pretending to care about the preservation of crumbling French Quarter architecture. My eyes glazed over as Mrs. Dubois, draped in enough diamonds to sink a small yacht, droned on about the importance of heritage. Heritage, my ass. I was more concerned with the stain on my vintage Dior dress, courtesy of spilled shrimp cocktail. It was a Daphne Edwards original, naturally. Damn shame. My reputation as a tailor rested on these kinds of events. Tonight, it felt more like a scaffold. Then I saw her. Across the room, a beacon of light in this sea of stuffy philanthropy. A shock of blonde hair, a figure poured into a simple yet devastatingly elegant emerald green sheath. Who was this woman? She wasn't dripping in jewels or air-kissing every puffed-up socialite in sight. Instead, she was patiently helping Mrs. Fontenot, the ancient matriarch of the Garden District, navigate the crowded ballroom. A small gesture, but it resonated with a sincerity that seemed utterly foreign in this environment. I needed air. I slipped out of the main room, catching one last glimpse of the blonde beauty as I went. I found a quiet alcove, a small balcony overlooking a courtyard bathed in the soft glow of gas lamps, and let out a long sigh. The sultry New Orleans night air was thick and sweet, a stark contrast to the chilled champagne and stale air of the ballroom. It was out here, away from the glittering facade, that the real city breathed. I lit a cigarette, savoring the nicotine's familiar burn as I watched the shadows lengthen across the courtyard. A soft chime startled me. The blonde was stepping onto the balcony. In her hand, a small tarnished silver locket. She caught my eye and offered a shy smile. "Mind if I join you?" Her voice low and melodic, like a cello's whisper. "It's a little stifling in there." "Be my guest," I managed, my voice rougher than I intended. Damn nerves. She moved with a grace that belied the simplicity of her dress, closer than I expected. The silver locket swung gently from her fingertips. "Family heirloom," she explained, noticing my gaze. "Just donated it to the auction." Then came a soft laugh, self-deprecating. "Probably should have kept it, considering." She trailed off, the smile fading slightly. "Considering?" I prompted, my curiosity stoked. She looked at me then, really looked at me, with those striking green eyes. They held a depth that surprised me, a hint of vulnerability that was both alluring and disconcerting. "Considering I'm about to bankrupt myself with this wedding I'm planning," she admitted, with a wry smile. "The costs are ridiculous. And the dress. Don't even get me started." "Weddings?" I scoffed, taking a long drag of my cigarette. "One big, expensive performance." "Tell me about it," she sighed. "I'm at my wit's end, the dress especially. Nothing seems right." "I'm a tailor," I offered, the words almost escaping before I could stop them. "Daphne Edwards, maybe I can help." Her face lit up, a smile transforming her features. "Really, you're the Daphne Edwards? I've heard such wonderful things." Her expression turned pensive. "I suppose I should have introduced myself. I'm Danielle Washington, and I desperately need a wedding dress." My boutique, tucked away on a quiet side street in the French Quarter, was my sanctuary. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the bolts of silk and lace, the antique sewing machine humming softly in the corner. It was here, surrounded by the textures and scents of my craft, that I felt most myself. Danielle's arrival disrupted the tranquil atmosphere, not in a jarring way but like a sudden gust of wind, rustling through a still room. "It's divine," she breathed, her gaze sweeping across the space. "Like stepping into another world." She ran a hand over a bolt of ivory silk, her touch almost reverent. "I never imagined something like this existed outside of fashion magazines." I had to give it to her. Danielle Washington might be a bridezilla in the making, but she had taste. "So," I began, pulling out a measuring tape. "Tell me about your vision." As I approached, the scent of her perfume, something light and floral, filled the air. It was intoxicating. Damn. I focused on her measurements, keeping my breath steady, my touch professional. But every brush of my fingers against her skin sent a jolt of electricity through me, making it hard to concentrate. "This usually takes a few fittings," I managed. She laughed, a sound that was both playful and nervous. All I could see was her throat, exposed column above the silk. "I'm all yours," she responded. Over the next hour, amidst the rustling of fabric and the quiet murmur of our voices, a peculiar tension began to build. The measurements were easy enough, but choosing the fabric, the lace, the embellishments, each decision felt strangely intimate. As I draped different fabrics across her shoulders, imagining the shape of the dress taking form against her body, I found my gaze lingering for far too long. Every touch, every glance became charged with an unspoken energy. She was radiant, the ivory lace highlighting her golden hair and flawless skin. "My cousin swears by mermaid style," Danielle mused, holding up a glossy magazine page, but the image felt all wrong against her spirit. "She's getting married next month, you see. Huge cathedral wedding." A slight frown creased her brow. "Her dress is elaborate, to say the least." There was an edge to her voice, a hint of something I couldn't quite decipher. "We could strip back. Use lace. Something soft," I suggested. The vision in my head focused on the simplicity of her beauty, the gentle curve of a bias-cut skirt against her hips. It wouldn't be conventional. It wouldn't be what her cousin would choose. But it would be perfect. I never considered that," she admitted, her eyes widening. "It's beautiful." The conversation shifted, moving beyond the realm of fabric and design, delving into deeper waters. We discovered a shared love for vintage films, an appreciation for New Orleans jazz, and, most unexpectedly, a mutual fascination with the city's thriving drag scene. "The creativity," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "The artistry, it's incredible." She explained that her cousin would be horrified, but she secretly adored the drag competitions at a local club. "Have you ever been to the House of Bourbon?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. It was my turn to be surprised. I was a regular. I used to go with my ex. I often frequented the competitions, looking for silhouettes and design inspiration. I have, I answered, trying to keep my voice casual, my heart beating a little faster. "They put on quite a show." She leaned closer, her green eyes meeting mine. "Do you think—" She hesitated. "Would you maybe want to go with me sometime? Or for research purposes, of course." My lips curved into a smile. "Research," I echoed, the word laced with a double meaning we both understood. I suppose I could be persuaded. The appointment ended, but the lingering energy remained, a silent promise hanging in the air between us. The game was afoot, and I had a feeling things were about to get very interesting. The House of Bourbon was a world away from the hushed elegance of my boutique, a riot of color and sound, a haven for the city's most flamboyant and creative souls. Sequins shimmered under the dim lights, feathers swayed, and the air crackled with anticipation. Danielle, usually so composed, seemed almost giddy with excitement. "This is amazing," she shouted over the music, her eyes wide with wonder. I had to admit, seeing her like this, unguarded and enthralled, was intoxicating. We squeezed onto a plush velvet banquette near the stage, the energy of the crowd swirling around us. The first performer, a statuesque queen named Evangeline, took the stage in a cloud of crimson feathers and glittering rhinestones. Her voice, powerful and soulful, filled the room, and Danielle gasped, captivated by the performance. I watched her more than the stage, mesmerized by the play of light and shadow across her face, the way her eyes sparkled with delight. This was a different Danielle than the one who had nervously walked into my boutique a few days earlier. This Danielle was vibrant, alive, and utterly captivating. Damn, I was hooked. During intermission, a harried-looking man in a sequined vest approached our table. "Ladies," he said, his voice raspy, "I'm Jean Paul, the MC. We're a judge short tonight. Any chance one of you lovely ladies would be willing to fill in?" Danielle looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "Oh, I couldn't," she stammered, but I saw a flicker of excitement beneath her hesitation. "I'd be happy to," I volunteered, before she could talk herself out of it. "I have a keen eye for detail. I come for Des." "Wonderful," Jean Paul exclaimed, grabbing my hand and pulling me towards the stage. "You're a lifesaver, darling." I glanced back at Danielle, who was watching me with a mixture of amusement and awe. This was developing into something unexpected. Being a judge was a blast, way more fun than I thought it would be. The costumes were outrageous, the performances captivating, and the energy of the crowd infectious. I shared whispered comments and knowing glances with Danielle throughout the evening, our hands brushing occasionally in the dim light. With each touch, the current between us intensified, the unspoken attraction becoming more and more palpable. After the show, we wandered through the French Quarter, the streets quiet and deserted in the early morning hours. The night air was thick with the scent of jasmine and damp earth, the sound of our footsteps echoing on the cobblestones. We stopped at a small, all-night cafe, the warm glow of the lights spilling onto the sidewalk. Over steaming cups of coffee, our conversation turned more personal. "I haven't felt this alive in a long time," Danielle confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's like..." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Like I'm finally seeing the world in color again." There was a sadness in her eyes, a shadow that hinted at something deeper. "How can you think of marrying someone who doesn't see this in you?" I blurted out. "It's complicated," she said, her voice tight. "He's stable, reliable. My family loves him." She looked down at her coffee, swirling it absently. "He represents everything I thought I wanted." The silence hung heavy between us, filled with unspoken questions and burgeoning emotions. "But," she continued, finally meeting my gaze, "lately I've been questioning everything." The vulnerability in her eyes was disarming. "I don't think I'm in love with him," she whispered. The air crackled between us, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the quiet cafe. I walked her to her car, and she kissed my cheek. It was more than politeness. It was a promise. The days following our night at the House of Bourbon were a blur of stolen glances, lingering touches, and unspoken desires. Danielle's wedding dress fittings became our secret rendezvous, a sanctuary from the outside world where we could explore the simmering tension between us. The dress itself, a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace, seemed to embody the delicate dance we were engaged in. Each stitch, each fitting, brought us closer, the fabric a tangible link between our increasingly intertwined lives. One afternoon, as I was adjusting the drape of the skirt, Danielle's phone buzzed incessantly. She glanced at the screen, her face clouding over. "It's him," she muttered, her voice tight with tension. "He's demanding to know where I am." I continued to work but could hear the terse conversation with her fiancé. There was an edge to her voice, a forced cheerfulness when he asked about the dress. She hung up abruptly, and her fingers fidgeted nervously in her lap. It was unsettling, the sudden intrusion into the quiet intimacy of my studio. Each fitting stretched longer, each conversation more intimate, with the unspoken words between us growing louder with every passing moment. "He's controlling," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He wants to know every detail of my life, who I see, where I go, what I think." She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting the delicate lace of the dress. "It's suffocating." Her words echoed my own past experiences, the suffocating constraints of relationships built on expectations and control. I saw a reflection of myself in her struggles, a shared yearning for something more, something real. A few days later, her fiancé Richard, a stiff, impeccably dressed man with a condescending smile, made a surprise appearance at the boutique. He turned over my carefully arranged fabric samples and dismissed my design choices with a flick of the wrist. He called the lace fussy, the silk impractical, the overall design modern and form-fitting. It was deemed inappropriate for a traditional church wedding. "I envisioned something more traditional," he declared, his voice dripping with condescension. "Something more befitting a bride." He ran his hand down Danielle's arm, a possessive gesture that made my stomach churn. The air in the room thickened, the unspoken tension crackling between the three of us. Danielle remained silent and pale, clearly uncomfortable under Richard's scrutiny but seemingly powerless to object. The scene played out like a macabre puppet show. I bit back a sharp retort, reminding myself that he was her client, or he was supposed to be. Instead, I forced a tight smile. "Of course," I said, my voice strained. "We can certainly explore other options." My hands clenched into fists beneath the folds of the fabric. I wanted to tell him to go to hell, to leave Danielle and never darken my doorway again. But I held my tongue, the unspoken words burning a hole in my throat, as he proceeded to dictate his vision for the dress. A vision that was as bland and lifeless as he was. After he left, the silence in the studio was deafening. I almost hated him. Almost. Danielle sat motionless in her chair, her eyes fixed on the now rumpled silk and lace. I knelt before her, gently taking her hands in mine. "You don't have to do this, you know," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to marry him." She looked at me then, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and longing. "I know," she breathed, her voice trembling. "But what else is there?" The unwritten rules hung heavy in the air, the societal expectations that bound us both. But in that moment, in the shared silence of my studio, a new possibility began to take shape, a thread of hope weaving its way through the tangled mess of her life. I found the courage to touch her cheek, to let my fingers linger a moment longer than necessary. It was a small gesture, but in that touch, a silent promise was made, a new chapter begun. The tension between Danielle and me had become a living thing, breathing in the quiet moments between fittings, crackling in the charged air of my studio. It was a dangerous game we were playing, a delicate dance on the edge of a precipice, but neither of us seemed willing or able to pull back. We found ourselves back at the House of Bourbon, not as designer and client, but as co-conspirators in a shared secret. The drag show was a welcome distraction, a vibrant explosion of color and energy that temporarily pushed aside the anxieties swirling around Danielle's impending wedding. We laughed, we cheered, we whispered comments back and forth, our hands brushing occasionally in the darkness. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, a symphony of longing and desire playing out between us. "Evangeline is even more stunning tonight," Danielle shouted over the music, her eyes sparkling with admiration. I nodded, my gaze momentarily drawn to the stage, but my attention quickly returned to Danielle. She was radiant, her laughter echoing through the room, a stark contrast to the subdued woman who had endured Richard's condescending remarks in my studio. After the show, we walked out into the warm New Orleans night. Rain began to fall, a soft drizzle that transformed the city streets into a shimmering canvas of reflected light. We stood under the awning of a closed antique shop, watching the rain fall, the silence between us broken only by the rhythmic drumming of the water against the pavement. "I don't want to go home," Danielle whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain. Her eyes, dark and luminous, met mine, and in that moment, the world shifted on its axis. I reached out, my fingers brushing against her cheek, the touch sending a shiver down my spine. "You don't have to," I replied, my voice husky with emotion. The air crackled between us, the unspoken words finally taking shape. She leaned in then, her lips brushing against mine, a tentative touch that quickly blossomed into a passionate embrace. The rain washed over us, cleansing, purifying, erasing the doubts and fears that had held us captive for so long. It was a kiss that tasted of freedom, of defiance, of a future unwritten. It was a beginning, a messy, complicated, beautiful beginning. We found ourselves in a quiet corner booth of a dimly lit bar, the rain still falling softly outside. The world outside faded away, the only reality the warmth of her hand in mine, the intensity of her gaze. Over glasses of wine the dam finally broke. Danielle confessed her growing feelings for me, her confusion about her engagement, her fear of disappointing her family and friends. "I'm not supposed to feel this way," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm supposed to be getting married. To him." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of societal expectations and ingrained traditions. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "You don't have to be anyone but yourself, Danielle," I said, my voice firm. "You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, who loves you for who you are." I squeezed her hand, my heart pounding in my chest. "But what about everyone else?" she asked, her voice laced with anxiety. "What about my family? My friends? They'll never understand." I met her gaze, my eyes filled with a conviction that surprised even myself. My own family, hell, wouldn't approve, but that wasn't the point. "Let them be damned," I said softly. "Your happiness is what matters. Your life is your own." The words hung in the air, a declaration of independence, a rebellion against the constraints of convention. And I hesitated, my voice catching in my throat. "I adore you, Danielle. I love you, flaws and fears all." A slow smile spread across her face, a glimmer of hope breaking through the clouds of doubt and fear. "I love you too, Daphne," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. In that moment, amidst the smoky haze of the bar and the gentle rhythm of the rain outside, a new world opened up for us. A world where love and desire could finally bloom, free from the constraints of expectation and the weight of tradition. It was a terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly undeniable truth. Our whispered confessions in the dimly lit bar had unleashed a torrent of emotions, a mix of exhilaration and fear, desire and uncertainty. We were stepping into uncharted territory, defying the carefully constructed narratives of our lives. The world, once familiar and predictable, now felt like a shifting landscape, full of hidden dangers and unexpected possibilities. The inevitable confrontation arrived with the force of a hurricane. Richard, alerted by some well-meaning busybody, stormed into my boutique, his face contorted with rage. The carefully curated calm of my studio shattered under the weight of his accusations. He didn't yell, not exactly. His voice was low and menacing, laced with a chilling undercurrent of control. He called me a homewrecker, a predator, a manipulative artist. He spat the word like a curse. His face was inches from mine, and I smelled something stale on his breath. It might have been liquor. He accused me of poisoning Danielle against him, of turning her against the life they had planned together. "She was happy before she met you," he hissed, his eyes blazing with fury. "She was going to marry me. We were going to have a family." He looked at Danielle, his voice softening slightly, but the underlying threat remained. "You can still fix this, Danielle," he pleaded. "You can come back to me. We can forget all of this ever happened." Danielle stood beside me, pale but resolute. She'd been more nervous than I'd expected as he approached my studio. A part of me worried she'd cave and give in. But the moment arrived and something in her seemed to snap. "No, Richard," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I can't." The words hung in the air, a declaration of independence, a final severing of ties. He stared at her, disbelieving, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Then, without another word, a word she choked out so dramatically that even I felt a prick of fear, I watched him turn and walk away. His shoulders slumped, his figure disappearing into the bustling streets of the French Quarter, a shadow of the man he once thought he was. In the aftermath, in the quiet solitude of my studio, Danielle finally broke down. The tears came in a torrent, a release of years of pent-up emotions, of suppressed desires, of a life lived according to someone else's script. I held her close, whispering words of comfort and reassurance, my own heart aching with a mixture of love and fear. "What am I going to do?" she asked, her voice thick with tears. Now that her old life had been dismantled by her own choice, a terrifying emptiness remained. What new dreams could rebuild it? What kind of future? The weight of her decision, the magnitude of the change she had wrought, pressed down on her, threatening to crush her beneath its weight. "We'll figure it out," I murmured, stroking her hair, my voice filled with a conviction I didn't quite feel. Together. The final fitting for her wedding dress was supposed to be a celebration, a culmination of months of work and planning. Instead, it became a symbolic dismantling of the life she had once envisioned. As I helped her into the dress, the ivory silk and delicate lace now felt heavy, a reminder of the life she was leaving behind. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion, "but it's not me." I placed my hands on her shoulders, looking into her eyes, seeing the reflection of my own anxieties and hopes in their depths. We ended up getting physical there in the studio, surrounded by all the fabric rolls and mannequin parts, with the dress hanging still half-made on its stand, ignoring the messages and calls her phone was receiving from her family, whom Richard had no doubt notified before leaving. "Then let's change it," I said softly. "Let's make it yours." In that moment, a new vision began to take shape, a transformation not just of a dress, but of a life. The scissors, once symbols of finality, now became tools of creation, cutting away the old to make way for the new. The aftermath of Danielle's broken engagement was a whirlwind of whispered gossip, disapproving glances, and strained family dinners. The old guard of New Orleans society closed ranks, ostracizing Danielle for daring to defy convention, for choosing love over tradition. I too became a target of their scorn, the other woman, the temptress who had lured Danielle away from her proper path. It didn't stop me from moving to Danielle, as she'd called it dramatically. I held her hand tight as we walked through the French Quarter, ignoring the whispers and stares that followed us. I told her nothing her family said could touch us. I held her close at any family gathering or restaurant where we'd run into her former circle of acquaintance, not hiding the intimacy we shared, not hiding our love. It was an act of defiance, a declaration of our love in the face of their disapproval. "They'll get over it," I reassured her, though a part of me wasn't entirely sure. "They just need time." But the whispers and the judgment stung, a constant reminder of the societal pressures we were up against. I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me in the least, if I didn't sometimes wake up at night, in cold sweat, thinking about what kind of life we were signing up for. So we left. We rented a car and drove to Savannah for a fashion design event, a haven for artists and designers, for those who dared to create their own realities. We presented our individual latest designs there, and we won enough prize money to start the next stage of our shared life. We made love in our hotel room that night. No guilt, simply happiness to be together. The dress she'd never wear we redesigned and presented proudly in the exhibition. I even managed to hide the fact it had nearly been a wedding dress. We walked along the riverfront, hand in hand, the warm Georgia sun on our faces, the scent of salt air filling our lungs. It was a world away from the stifling confines of New Orleans society, a place where we could simply be ourselves, without judgment or pretense. We attended workshops, critiqued each other's designs, and reveled in the camaraderie of fellow artists. I watched Danielle come alive in this new environment, her creativity blossoming, her laughter echoing through the halls of the exhibition center. She started redesigning her wedding dress into something new. She removed the lace, shortened the train, and added splashes of color, transforming it into a vibrant and unconventional evening gown. The ghost of Richard is officially gone, she smirked. It was a cathartic process, a symbolic shedding of the past, a reclaiming of her own narrative. In those shared moments, surrounded by the beauty of Savannah and the energy of our fellow artists, our bond deepened, our love taking root in the fertile ground of shared dreams and mutual respect. One evening, as we sat on a balcony overlooking the river, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Danielle turned to me, her eyes shining with a newfound confidence. "I want to open a boutique with you," she declared, her voice filled with excitement. "A place where we can create our own designs, where we can empower others to express themselves through fashion." It was a bold idea, a risky venture. But in that moment, as I looked into her eyes, I knew that we could do anything, together. The whispers of disapproval, the judgment of others, faded into the background, replaced by the shared vision of a future built on love, creativity, and the courage to defy convention. The old life, with its suffocating constraints and prescribed roles, was behind us. A new chapter was beginning, a chapter written by our own hands, a story of love, resilience, and the transformative power of art. Back in New Orleans, the whispers hadn't ceased entirely, but they had lost their sting. Danielle's newfound confidence, her unwavering commitment to our shared vision, acted as a shield against the judgment of others. We were creating our own world, a world where love and creativity reigned supreme. The disapproval of those who clung to outdated traditions no longer held the same power. We were free. Our first official date, after the tumultuous weeks of hiding our feelings and dealing with the fallout of her broken engagement, felt like a celebration. We chose a small, intimate restaurant in the French Quarter, a place known for its exquisite Creole cuisine and romantic ambiance. I wore a simple black dress, the one that Danielle always said made me look like a 1940 seconds film star. She chose a vibrant red dress, the color highlighting the fire in her eyes. "You look breathtaking," I stammered, my heart pounding in my chest. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied, her eyes sparkling with mischief. We laughed, the tension of the past weeks melting away, replaced by a sense of giddy anticipation. The dinner was a blur of delicious food, shared laughter, and stolen glances across the candlelit table. It was a reaffirmation of our connection, a reminder of the joy we found in each other's company. For the first time in a long time, the future felt bright, full of promise and possibility. The upcoming drag competition at the House of Bourbon provided the perfect opportunity to showcase our combined talents. We spent hours in my studio, sketching designs, draping fabrics, and embellishing costumes. It was a collaborative process, a fusion of our individual styles and shared vision. I designed a jumpsuit for myself that was minimalist and yet bold in fire engine red. Danielle had chosen deep blue fabric, and the silhouette was a surprise. The night of the competition buzzed with excitement. The crowd roared its approval as each performer took the stage, their costumes shimmering under the lights, their energy infectious. We cheered and laughed, our hands clasped together, our hearts pounding in unison. When the winner was announced, a dazzling queen named Luna, we both turned, spontaneously excited to each other, and embraced. It was a moment of pure joy, a celebration not just of Luna's victory, but of our own shared journey. In that embrace, amidst the cheers and applause, we sealed our commitment to each other, a silent promise to face the world, hand in hand, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The after-party was a blur of music, dancing, and celebratory cocktails. We found ourselves on a small balcony overlooking the French Quarter, the city lights twinkling below us like a scattered handful of diamonds. I turned to kiss her then, my lips finding hers in a spontaneous burst of affection that spoke volumes. It wasn't a calculated move, a carefully orchestrated display of public affection. It was a natural expression of our love, a declaration of our belonging to each other. The whispers and stares of the New Orleans elite, once a source of anxiety and fear, now seemed inconsequential. We were no longer hiding, no longer playing by their rules. We were living our truth, embracing our love, and creating our own narrative. In that kiss, under the watchful eyes of the city, we claimed our place, not as outcasts or rebels, but as two women in love, unafraid to defy convention and embrace the messy, beautiful reality of their hearts. The world might not always understand, but in that moment, it didn't matter. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. Moving in together felt like the most natural thing in the world, a culmination of the journey we had embarked on. We found a charming apartment in the French Quarter, a space filled with light and character, a place where we could build our future together. It wasn't a grand mansion or a sprawling estate, but it was ours, a sanctuary from the prying eyes and whispered judgments of the outside world. The resistance, as predicted, came primarily from Danielle's family. Her mother, a pillar of New Orleans society, expressed her disapproval in thinly veiled pronouncements about proper decorum and the importance of appearances. Her father, a quiet, reserved man, simply shook his head and retreated further into his shell. Her cousins, the ones with the elaborate weddings and the perfectly manicured lives, whispered amongst themselves, their disapproval radiating like a noxious gas. The gossip, of course, was rampant. We were the subject of hushed conversations at cocktail parties, the target of disapproving glances at charity galas. The old guard of New Orleans society, clinging to their outdated traditions and rigid social hierarchies, couldn't comprehend our love, our defiance of their carefully constructed norms. They saw us as a threat, an anomaly, a disruption to their carefully ordered world. But we stood firm, our love a fortress against their disapproval. We attended social functions, hand in hand, our heads held high. We refused to hide, to apologize, to conform to their expectations. We were living our truth, and their judgment, while irritating, couldn't diminish the strength of our bond. I had my own demons to fight as well. Shame would sometimes creep into my head at night, when remembering my parents' reaction to me first bringing home a girl. They hadn't been as outspoken as Danielle's family, but the disappointment I could read between the lines haunted me for ages after. I pushed that memory away though, angry at myself even now. So what? Danielle was worth it. She's worth whatever judgment comes our way. One afternoon, Danielle suggested donating her redesigned wedding dress to a charity auction. It went through my head how expensive it had been. But her words, "I wanted to represent change," rang true. It was a powerful gesture, a symbolic shedding of the past, a transformation of something old and constricting into something new and empowering. The dress, once a symbol of a life she had almost settled for, now became a symbol of hope, of resilience, of the courage to break free and create your own path. It felt good, helping load the dress onto a truck where it would later be auctioned, to some person unknown. It wasn't mine, it never was, but seeing it go brought peace. The gown was auctioned successfully, and we used the unexpected sum of money to finance the design of an entirely new inclusive collection, one that would break the norms of clothing, a true gender-fluid style. I started to get the hang of this life, starting to imagine the future more clearly. I dreamed of Danielle walking through our new shop, the one Danielle had so optimistically planned. I dreamed of opening day, and of having a child or two someday. Amidst the challenges and the disapproval, our love grew stronger, our bond deepening with each shared experience. We were more than just lovers, we were partners, co-conspirators, fellow travelers on a journey of self-discovery and creative expression. We moved into our dream apartment, furnished it, and decorated it to reflect our personalities. The space was filled with plants, books, artwork, and of course, fabrics. By now, I had almost finished converting the rest of Danielle's wedding dress into a stunning art piece, one that represented her journey. It was far from the traditional gown it once was, a vibrant tapestry of textures and colors that spoke a language we felt together, a language of defiance and joy. We decided to donate it to a local art gallery, a testament to our love, our resilience, and the transformative power of art. Our shared dream, the one that had taken root in a quiet savannah balcony, finally blossomed into reality. We found the perfect location for our boutique, a charming storefront on a bustling street in the French Quarter, just a few blocks from my old studio. The space was raw, full of potential, a blank canvas waiting for our creative touch. We spent weeks transforming it, painting walls, installing shelves, and curating a collection of unique and inspiring designs. It was a labor of love, a testament to our shared vision and unwavering commitment to each other. The grand opening was a triumph. The space buzzed with energy, a mix of old friends, new acquaintances, and curious onlookers. Danielle, radiant in a custom-designed jumpsuit, greeted guests with a warmth and grace that belied the anxieties of the past months. I, in a sleek black dress, circulated through the crowd, answering questions, sharing our story, and basking in the glow of our shared accomplishment. Even Danielle's family, though still somewhat reserved, showed up, their presence a tacit acknowledgement of our success, a grudging acceptance of the life we had created. The boutique was more than just a business. It was a statement, a declaration of our love, our creativity, and our defiance of convention. It was a space where people could come to express themselves, to find clothes that reflected their individual style and celebrated their unique identities. It was our gift to the city, a haven for those who dared to be different, who embraced their own unique beauty. The inclusive nature of our designs quickly garnered attention, attracting a diverse clientele, from artists and musicians to drag queens and socialites. "This feels right," I whispered to Danielle during a lull between customers. She'd never looked happier. Her vision, once simply a dream, had found solid form. That night, after the last guest had departed, we stood in the empty boutique, surrounded by the remnants of the celebration. The air was thick with the scent of champagne and the lingering energy of the evening. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Danielle's eyes widened in surprise as I opened it, revealing a delicate silver ring, a custom design I had crafted myself. It wasn't a traditional engagement ring, not a symbol of ownership or possession. It was a symbol of our partnership, our shared journey, our unwavering commitment to each other. "I love this life, every moment of it, because I have you, Danielle." I placed the ring on her finger, and we ended up making love right there in the shop, surrounded by the scent of new fabric and the beauty of our newest inclusive collection. "Daphne," she breathed, her voice choked with emotion. "I love you. I love tis.us." In that moment, amidst the quiet stillness of our boutique, a new chapter began. A chapter filled with the promise of a future built on love, creativity, and the unwavering belief in the power of our shared dreams. 1 year later, we found ourselves back at the same charity gala where we had first met. The whispers and stares had all but disappeared, replaced by nods of acknowledgement, smiles of greeting, and even a few genuine compliments. We were no longer outcasts, no longer a source of scandal. We were simply Daphne and Danielle, two women in love, two artists who had dared to create their own path. Standing on a balcony overlooking the French Quarter, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, a comforting sight now filled with memories not so distant, I looked at Danielle as I raised a glass of wine. I thought back to the first conversation we had, to the nervous excitement, to the first spark between us that blossomed into a love so strong, so resilient. "Do you remember all the obstacles we had to go through?" "Yes," Danielle replied, her eyes shining with a mixture of amusement and gratitude. "But it was all worth it, wasn't it?" "Every damn second," I replied, raising her glass for us to finally toast, a gesture of celebration, of gratitude, of a love that had not only endured but thrived amidst the challenges and uncertainties of life. The future stretched before us, a vast expanse of unwritten possibilities, and we were ready to face it, hand in hand, together. The future, together. Our love story, once a whispered secret, a source of scandal and disapproval, had become a quiet testament to the enduring power of connection. We had weathered the storms, defied the expectations, and emerged stronger, more united than ever. Our boutique flourished, a vibrant hub of creativity and self-expression, a testament to our shared vision and unwavering belief in the power of art. The proposal, a spontaneous outpouring of love amidst the celebratory chaos of our boutique's anniversary party, felt like a natural progression, a sealing of a bond that had already been forged in the fires of adversity. The ring, a simple band of intertwined silver and gold, symbolized the strength and unity of our partnership. It wasn't a promise of a fairy tale ending, not a guarantee of a life free from challenges. It was a commitment to face whatever life threw our way, hand in hand, together. The ceremony wasn't a grand affair, not a spectacle for the prying eyes of New Orleans society. It was an intimate gathering of friends and chosen family, a celebration of our love in the space that had become a symbol of our shared journey. The studio, transformed by soft lighting and fragrant flowers, felt sacred, a sanctuary where we could exchange our vows, our promises echoing through the space, a testament to the depth and enduring nature of our love. We stood hand in hand, our eyes locked in a gaze that spoke volumes, our hearts overflowing with a love that had defied convention, overcome adversity, and blossomed into something truly extraordinary. The vows we exchanged were simple, heartfelt, a reflection of the journey we had taken together. They weren't promises of perfection, not guarantees of a happily ever after. They were acknowledgments of our flaws, our fears, our shared humanity, and our unwavering commitment to navigate the complexities of life, together. After exchanging the custom-designed bands and promising to grow, both as people and in our love, we stood at the threshold of our future, a future unwritten, uncharted, yet filled with a sense of boundless possibility. The journey hadn't been easy, but the rewards were immeasurable, a love that had not only endured but thrived, a testament to the transformative power of connection, creativity, and the courage to defy convention. The quiet moments, the stolen glances, the shared laughter, these were enough now, these small acts of intimacy weaving a tapestry of love and connection around them. For years our story had unfolded, from stolen kisses in the rain-swept streets of the French Quarter to hushed conversations in dimly lit bars. From the challenges of societal disapproval to the triumphs of shared dreams realized, every step of the way our souls found comfort within themselves as we continued to grow together. I love every damn moment, never boring. I laughed, and she put the wine glass next to her chair at the small round table in our studio where we often had lunch, grabbing my hand and pulling me close, initiating a sweet and deep kiss. It tasted of relief, of years of pent-up feelings of guilt finally gone, of certainty in our love. But life, as we had learned, was a fickle mistress. As often it rewards our steps into the unknown, as much as it seems to mock our willingness to defy the path laid in front of us. A nagging cough Danielle had been hiding, the one I'd chided her about more and more often, returned, more forcefully with every passing day. Within months it escalated, morphing into something more sinister, more insidious. The diagnosis, delivered in sterile hospital room, echoed in my ears, a death knell to the life we had so carefully constructed. "No," I whispered over and over, as I sat next to her now empty hospital bed. A picture of Danielle's parents waving to me from across the small room sat on her nightstand, next to a vase of flowers. It's not possible. How could I forget? The pain and heartache, the finality of loss, the laughter, the whispers, the touch of her hand, memories clung to me like the faint scent of her perfume, a constant reminder of what had been, of what could never be again. I picked up the vase of flowers and inhaled their perfume, ignoring how the floral smell failed to evoke Danielle's memory, but rather seemed a cruel parody. The memory of her scent was mine and mine only. I found myself back on that same balcony, overlooking the twinkling lights of the French Quarter, the city a silent witness to the unfolding drama of my life. The breeze carried the faint scent of jasmine and rain, a familiar fragrance that once brought with it the thrill of new beginnings. Now it carried only the weight of absence, the ache of what was lost. In the heart of a city that had once witnessed the blossoming of our love, I now mourned its untimely demise, the symphony of our shared dreams fading into an unbearable silence.